facilitators. I would love to provide an opportunity for my other co-facilitator to say hello as well, Lisa.
Good afternoon, Lisa, Keohokalole, Schauer. Glad to see everyone at our Community Advisory Group meeting.
Thank you all for joining us for the May 11th CAG meeting. We have a great opportunity to continue to unpack a number of efforts, in particular relative to design, and then we'll receive a community engagement update as well. Why don't we go ahead and go through our initial slides, and then we'll get the program going. Just a reminder, we have closed captions in English and in Spanish. English closed captions are available within Zoom and YouTube. Users can follow this link to view both English and Spanish captions in a separate browser window, https://ibr.news/captions. Next slide, please. A reminder of how to access closed captions. At the bottom middle of your screen, you should see a menu of options. If you can't see the menu, hover your mouse over the bottom middle of the screen, then click on the CC icon and a separate window with captions will appear. In the effort to continue to center equity, there is an ASL interpreter in addition to closed captioning. To make sure the interpreter is always visible, please right-click their video and select Spotlight Video. For those watching on YouTube, when we screen share, you will be able to see the slideshow, closed captioning, and the ASL interpreter. You will still be able to hear different people speaking, but may not see them. Thanks again to our webinar participants. Just a few tips. Again, thank you for joining us today. Please join audio by either phone or computer, but not both. This helps to reduce the feedback. And of course, we encourage panelists to turn on your video. Please keep your audio on mute when not speaking. If you experience technical difficulties, please contact program staff at 360-329-6744. Just a reminder for those wishing to offer public input, there will be an opportunity to provide brief public input later in the meeting today, roughly around 5:45 p.m. Verbal public comment will be welcome in the Zoom webinar during the designated time with the option to turn on your web camera. Please use a link located in the meeting description on YouTube meeting page or on the IBR CAG meeting webpage. Commenters will not be allowed to share their screens and will be removed from the room once the public comment period concludes. To comment by phone, you may dial 669-900-6833 or 408-638-0968. You'll want to enter meeting ID number 993-5459-6043, as well as a passcode 674942. You'll also want to dial *9 to raise your hand. After you are invited to speak, please do dial *6 to unmute yourself. To submit comment after the meeting, please fill out the comment form on the program website or email your comments to info@interstatebridge.org with CAG Public Comment in the subject line. You may also call 360-859-0494 for Washingtonians, 503-897-9218 for Oregonians, or dial our 800 number 1-888-503-6735 and state CAG Public Comment in your message. Written comments need to explicitly say CAG Public Comment in the subject line or in the body of the message for them to be identified and distributed to CAG members. All written comments must be received prior to 48 hours in advance of each upcoming meeting in order to be distributed to advisory group members. Comments received after that point will be distributed to members in advance of their next meeting. Just a reminder, as we enter into our virtual space here, it's important for us always, again, to put relationships first, for us to keep focused on our common goal, for us to always notice the power dynamics in the room, for us to create a space for multiple truths and norms, to be kind and brave, practice examining racially biased systems and processes, and for us all to be looking for opportunities for learning. Just a reminder of what we'll be covering today. Here in a second, I'll turn it over to our co-chairs for welcome. And then we'll have an opportunity for all of you to provide an opportunity to introduce yourselves. We'll receive a program update from Frank Green, Deputy Program Administrator. Then we'll have an opportunity of really unpacking, again, part 2 of our urban design conversation. You'll then receive a community engagement update by our community engagement team. We'll receive public comments, and then we'll offer final thoughts and adjourn the meeting. So a packed discussion today. So with that, I will turn it over to our co-chairs, Mr. Ed Washington and Ms. Lynn Valenter.
Thank you, Johnell. I think Ed's going to kick it off inspirationally, as he usually does, and then I get to address some of the sharing among members. So Ed, I saw you earlier. Are you unmuted?
Yes, I am now. I'd like to welcome everybody to this meeting. I'm having difficulty with my internet. I keep getting low, so I may just drop off, but I'd like to welcome all of you to today's meeting. This is a special day. I mean, it's about 85, probably close to 90 degrees. And so just really appreciate all of you spending time with us this afternoon. And I'm going to pass it back over to Lynn Valenter if she has any additional words. Lynn?
Yeah, I think we're going to do a little bit of a kind of sharing moment and getting to know each other. At one point, we had hoped to get together face to face, but since that's not happening, we still need to create a bond as we go through all of this together. So I'm going to ask each of you to share your name, organizational affiliation or at-large status, preferred pronouns, and then what is the best animal? So I did not come up with this, but I think it will be most interesting. Oh, good. So now I can see people. So if we can get, I'm going to just pick on somebody to start, and then we'll take volunteers from there. Martha, I think you were the first one on, so I'm going to go ahead and ask you to lead us off with that information, including the best animal, and then pass it on to someone else.
I'm Martha Wiley. I'm an at-large attendee, and my focus is sort of transit. My favorite animal is a cat. Not original, I know, but still, I like cats.
And then do you want to pick somebody else to pass it on to?
Pick someone. Okay, I picked Darcy.
Hey everyone, Darcy Hoffman. I'm with Workforce Southwest Washington, but representing the Columbia Willamette Workforce Collaborative. Pronouns are she, her. And I think I would normally say dog, but my dogs are on my last nerve, so I'm not going to say dog. I'm going to say horse. And why don't I kick it over to Jana?
Well, you took the words out of my mouth. I'm Jana Jarvis with the Oregon Trucking Association, and I was going to say horse. In fact, I was going to ask all of you if you watched the Derby this last weekend. But, I will advise you that I have to testify tonight. We've got a hearing going on during the middle of this meeting. So when I disappear, that's where I've headed off to. So, and I will pass it over to Sherry.
Good afternoon, Sherry Call, President and CEO of the Washington Trucking Association here on the north side of the bridge. Boy, favorite animal, I will have to go with dog. And let me pass it over to Irina.
Okay, I'm Irina Phillips, and I represent East European Coalition, and we live on both sides of the bridge in southern Washington and northern Portland. And my favorite animal, I like equally cats and dogs, and I used to love horses, but I had an accident, so that's not my favorite animal anymore. So between 50% cats, 50% dogs. And I will pass next to Frank. No, Frank is the staff. So let's do Sherry. Or Sherry already
done.
spoke. Okay, Julie, my
There you
neighbor.
go.
Sorry, Irina, did you say Julie?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay, all right. I'm Julie. It's nice to see everyone. I am a volunteer participant from the Northeast Portland neighborhoods. And my favorite animal is probably, well, there's a variety of them, I guess, but categorically, I would say monkeys. I will pass it to, let's see, who has not gone yet? How about Paris?
And sorry to interrupt, but this is just for our CAG members. So.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. Not everybody. Okay. All right. How about, let's see, Jarina?
Jarina, can you unmute? There
Yes,
you go.
I sure can.
Great.
I'm Jarina Hatch. I work with Community in Motion in Vancouver, Washington as a mobility manager. She, her pronouns. Best animal to me is a tiger.
And then do you have a sense of a member you'd like to pick on, or do you want to? I'm not sure if you know everybody well enough yet.
I really don't, but I don't think I've heard anything from Sam.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, Jarina. So my name is Sam Kim. I'm super commuter from Brush Prairie, Washington to Hillsboro, Oregon. My pronouns are they, him, and my favorite animal is a cat because they're low maintenance. I do, like Jana, I do have to leave in the middle of this meeting because I have a budget hearing with Washington County. So I'll disappear as well. And I'd like to pick Michaela.
Hi, everyone. I'm Michaela Williams. I am also an at-large community member. I'm volunteering here for the program. And my favorite animal, I would have to say, are turtles.
Oh, no, you still have to pick somebody, Michaela.
Sorry, yes. Go ahead, Tom.
Thank you. My name's Tom Hickey. I work with the Bridgeton Neighborhood Association and try to represent the neighborhood associations in North Portland. And I wasn't going to vote for an animal. And then I realized that I have a tattoo on my shoulder of a cicada, or on my cicada tattoo, because the cicada is my spirit animal, because it says so much about the human condition that they're just fabulous animals and they're delicious. And I have no idea who's not gone yet.
I know Dina hasn't.
Dina, please save me.
I'm Dina Horton. I'm the Government Relations Director for PNWA, representing river users and multimodal freight users. She, her pronouns, and I am gonna have to say, as far as real animals, cats, but the best animal is Animal from the Muppet Show. That's the best. He's kind of my spirit animal, actually. So there you go.
Okay. And is there anyone that hasn't had a chance to introduce themselves that's a CAG member? I'm going to toggle screens here. I didn't see anybody when I took a quick peek. Okay.
I think I'm the only one left, Lynn.
Oh, I'm sorry. Please.
That's all right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Brooke Pillsbury, she, her pronouns, and I'm the senior executive at Clark College and representing for higher education and our commuters and our workforce development. My favorite animal varies from day to day between animals that I live with and animals otherwise, but a dog consistently wins. So dog it is.
Terrific. Well, thank you, everyone.
Lynn, I just had a really quick suggestion. Since we do these a bit where we kind of pick the next person, if it might be easier if like all the CAG members raise their hand, you know, in the WebEx or in the Zoom meeting at the start, and then we put our hands down as we go, and then it's like really clear who the pool of people is that's left to pick.
Great idea. Thank you, Julie. We'll add that to the standing instructions for this, since now that we've done it a few times and we've all kind of awkwardly picked people. So that's just a great problem solving move. So thank you. Really appreciate it. With that, I think I'm turning it over to Johnell to talk about the work plan.
Yes, thank you.
Okay,
Thank you,
is that
Lynn.
right? Okay, great.
Yep.
Thank you.
If we can get the next slide, please. You all have seen this again. We are now in quarter two. Just again, foreshadow of what we will be discussing. And of course, this schedule is emerging as the program continues to advance. Again, today we'll have an opportunity of looking at urban design. Both June and July will continue the discussion relative to urban design as well. Okay. And so with that, I am going to turn it over to Frank Green, our Assistant Program Administrator, for Administrator Update. Frank.
Thank you, Johnell. So good evening once again, and I'll reiterate what I think our co-chairs Ed and Lynn said. Thank you all for choosing to attend the meeting. I know a few folks have to leave, but we appreciate your commitment to continuing to move this conversation forward. I am the Assistant Program Administrator. Greg wanted me to send his apologies. He is in Europe on a much-deserved vacation, but I do believe will be back for the next one. So I have to answer the question since everyone else got to. You know, I think depending on the day, and I'll hope my dog over here won't listen, but you know, cats sometimes outrank dogs, I would say. I have two of both, so I like them all. But if you go to the next slide. So, you know, just wanted to quickly give a few updates since last we spoke, you know, a little bit, not quite a month ago. But if you remember last time, we gave a fairly in-depth discussion about how the finance plan and the financial discussions were going. And, you know, just wanted to draw everyone's attention to, if you're interested in, you know, really deeply diving more into some of those cost information and funding information slides or reports that we have, the program update section of our website has been updated to include both the cost estimate work with our risk assessment that we did, the financial plan, as well as the economics benefits analysis that we presented last week. Those reports are all on the webpage if folks are interested. But really, you know, some of the other interesting things that have been going on is we're really encouraged by the support the program is still getting from both legislatures. You know, on the Washington side, with the legislative session wrapping up, you know, one of the big things that came out of the session this year was that the program and this facility received tolling authorization from the Washington legislature, and the governor has since signed that bill, I think, as of Monday. So, you know, that's a really important step because tolling is the key piece of our finance plan, as we spoke about last month. But also on the Washington side, a key piece as well was the budget that was being worked on to include the Move Ahead Washington funding that had been identified last session and how it would be kind of applied and appropriated for the program. And so the legislature did move forward that budget package, and you know, we are waiting for the governor to sign that. But even on the Oregon side, you know, there's a lot of interesting and encouraging work going on with the discussion of a funding bill in the Oregon legislature, and I know that our staff, so Greg and Ray Mabey, as well as ODOT with Director Strickler, have attended several sessions with the Joint Committee on Transportation discussing the funding bill on the Oregon side, and so keep seeing that is encouraging. And one other note as it relates to kind of the legislatures and as with the tolling bill authorization bill, you know, everyone may have seen the conversation recently that came out about the perspective of putting kind of a pause on ODOT implementing tolling from the governor in Oregon. And just wanted to, you know, note that I think that really allows for more community engagement. But the kind of some of the technical work is still going to be progressing. And so, you know, with that technical work progressing, as I had mentioned, polling is a key piece of our financial plan, and you know, we still see that we'll be able to, you know, move forward as I had kind of mentioned before, even with this pause, which allows more community engagement to occur with the ODOT piece. You know, we still see that tolling could begin in mid to late 26 for the IVR program. So, you know, a lot of good work, lot of updated information to give since the last meeting, but as we've said, still, you know, encouraged by the support we're getting from, you know, our elected officials related to this program. That kind of feeds into the second piece, you know, that next step as well. That you know, in the middle part of this year, the program knows that there's several federal grants that you know, we will be pursuing and putting in applications for. The first of which, you know, we are waiting for the release of the funding opportunity, but it's going to be the MEGA grant, which is a federal grant that is part of the IIJA package that passed a couple of years ago. We are really expecting that kind of notice of funding opportunity to come maybe any day now. And we'll be putting in an application for that to help fund the program. A little bit later this year, we will be working with our FTA, Federal Transit Administration partners, to enter into their capital improvement grant process, which is a process that will help us fund the transit piece of this program. And we know that transit, you know, is looking to be performing very well, and we think we'll be very competitive for that grant. And then a little bit later this year, there's the Bridge Investment Program grant as well. And so, you know, a lot of moving parts as it relates to submitting for federal funding. And I won't go too into the weeds because I think I went pretty deep into the weeds at the last meeting, but knowing that those are coming is still very clear on the radar of the program team. I think we got a brief update on this last month, but wanted to remind everyone, if you haven't had a chance to either yourself look into this or you know, provide some information to folks that some of your constituents, that we do have a cultural resources open house still going on our webpage. That is an open house that really allows people to, you know, share their knowledge and provide some information about some of the important places around our program area. And so if you go onto our website and scroll to the location where there's announcements, that cultural resource open house is still there. And I believe if you haven't been on our website in a while, it might actually, a pop-up might come up as well. And so if you're having a difficult time logging into that and if you want to reach out to someone on the program, we'd be more than happy to help you get there. That open house, I believe, is still ongoing until May 18th. So there's a little bit of about a week left for us to get some feedback on that. And we'd be really encouraged if we can get as much feedback on that as we can. And then, you know, the program continues to present to a wide variety of locations, you know, be it, you know, business organizations and or neighborhoods, to make sure that we're continuing to get out there and make sure people have an opportunity to hear where we're at, to get a status update and to be able to ask us questions as we're progressing through work. And you can see a list of a couple of the recent places we've been at to present. So with that, that's kind of the high level update I wanted to give. I think we could probably pause for a quick minute if there's any questions, and then, move into the meat of the agenda to talk about urban design. So I don't know, are there any questions? Dina, I see your hands up.
Thank you. I was just curious if there were any updates related to the Coast Guard and the permitting process.
Thank you. Yeah, good question. I do believe we may have mentioned this at the last meeting, but we are actively coordinating with our federal partners, be it Federal Highway Administration and Federal Transit Administration, as well as the Coast Guard, to as we're proceeding with our environmental impact work. Part of that is that the team is analyzing a movable span that would meet the requirements of the preliminary navigation clearance determination. And we are also, kind of a dual path, continuing to have conversations with some of those users who would be potentially impacted if we were to, move forward with that fixed span bridge. And so that work is still ongoing. And, we know that we're meeting quite frequently with the Coast Guard, and we want to make sure that we're analyzing a design option that meets the requirement while still potentially pursuing, getting to an option that may allow for a fixed span. So we haven't gotten to a decision point yet on either one of those paths. It's really just making sure we're doing the analysis and the work necessary to get to our draft supplemental environmental impact statement. So, not a lot of kind of detailed update to give since the last meeting, but those conversations and that work is still progressing and ongoing.
Other questions, comments for Frank? Okay. Seeing or hearing none, thank you, Frank. Appreciate your update as always. Okay, with that, we are going to turn it over to Nolan Leinhardt with ZGF, who is helping with our urban design discussion, as well as with Lily. And Lily, I'm sorry, please say your last name for us so we know how to say it correctly.
Hi, thank you. It's Johnell.
Wonderful. Thank you for joining us, Lily and Nolan. Handing it off to you.
Thanks, Johnell. Well, good to see everybody again. Good evening. I'm Nolan Leinhardt with the IBR Urban Design team, and my colleague Lily is with me. Want to expand on the conversation that we had last time you saw us. We talked a little bit about the broader urban design process and how we'll step through it with an emphasis on focus areas, and then two issues that sort of track throughout the corridor, one being equity, and the other being climate. And so we're starting this conversation really diving more deeply into what it means to seek equity through urban design, and what the history of that is, what it means in this corridor, and then really to have a conversation with you about what it means to you, what we should be knowing about the places within this corridor and what they mean to you and the communities that you're a part of. Ultimately, as familiar as we are with the physical and social and economic characteristics of this corridor, we don't know nearly as much as individuals and consultants as we would with your input. So we appreciate in advance for the way that you can contribute to that. At the end, what we'll be asking you, and really throughout, and Lily will talk a little bit more about this, is what meanings do these places have for you and the communities that you're a part of? What stories might we be able to celebrate or highlight through urban design and public art? And it's also meaningful for you to hear about thoughts you have about how we can best engage you in these conversations going forward. And so Lily will talk about the approach that we intend to take. We want feedback on that so that we can, adjust it and engage as meaningfully as possible. And there'll be more opportunities for that down the line. But before we hand it off to Lily, I'll just highlight, this is a first pass at this story. It's based on our professional understanding and experience, but really the first principle of equitable urban design is that we're engaging with you, and that this is the end result would be a reflection of all of our work together. So Lily.
Thank you, Nolan, and hi everyone. It's good to see you all again. If we can forward to the next slide, please. Our presentation today is three-tiered. We're going to start off by looking at the legacy of inequity in planning. Then we will discuss how to integrate equity into urban design. And lastly, we will review how equity is intended to be facilitated at different scales of the IBR program. Next, please. So we wanted to start off with the reminder that an equity framework has already been established by the program, which defined equity. It set equity objectives, which we will review later in the presentation. The framework also established means to measure success and identified ways to put it all into action. And we're going to be using this established foundation for our work and conversations with you all throughout the project. Next, please. The IBR defined equity in two terms, and that is equity in process and equity in outcome. For process-related equity, it focuses on creating a voice and decision-making power for previously and presently disenfranchised communities and individuals. For outcome-related equity, it prioritizes tangible results through transport and economic benefits for equity priority communities. Next. Actually, if you could go to the previous slide. Thank you. So last time we, yep, I think, I'm sorry, I think there was a pause on my end. It is the next slide. Thank you. So last time we presented to you, we talked about what is urban design and how urban design impacts our experience and how urban design shapes the IBR program. So today, as Nolan mentioned, we're going to talk about equity in urban design. We'd love to make this presentation rather informal and create a space for you all to lean in. And as we go through these slides so that we can have an open dialogue, our intent today is to really share our collective knowledge and use this as a foundation that will inform our approach to designing with equity. In the future CAG meetings, we will dive into more specific focus areas along the IBR corridor and actually address how equity is shaping the places and spaces along the program. But today's presentation is intended to be a little bit more high level. Next. So we thought the first thing we'd do is, quite frankly, acknowledge that planning hasn't always been equitable. This is especially true among the historically disenfranchised communities and disadvantaged populations when it comes to access to land and access to housing. For example, African-American neighborhoods that were part of redlining tend to have fewer trees and less green spaces. And just as a reminder for everyone, redlining was a process of discriminatory practice that consisted of systematic denial of services to predominantly Black neighborhoods. We also want to acknowledge that women experience gender inequality in physical environments. Many public spaces don't feel safe because of lack of visibility or proper lighting or other aspects that contribute to the feeling of safety and security. Next. So today, we want to start off by acknowledging that communities across IBR corridor have a history of experiencing inequalities, whether it was the indigenous peoples that once thrived along the Columbia River, or the displacement of the albino community due to the original construction of the I-5 corridor. So in the following slides, we will touch on all four of these. And in this restorative inquiry, looking back at history, our goal is to really shed light on those lived inequity experiences by different communities, learn from them, and of course, create a better future. Next. So we'll start off with the Valenter floods. As you all are aware that, when the African-American community grew in Portland in the 1940s, the enforced segregation limited areas for housing for the growing Black community. The Vanport neighborhood, built by the Kaiser Schimpe Company right along the Columbia River, served as a temporary housing solution for the rapidly growing population. And close to 40% of that new community was African American. And in 1948, a massive flood erupted, and residents of Vanport had no warning or had any proper time to evacuate. The result was that 18,500 families were displaced, and more than a third of them were African American. And I wanted to pause here because, Ed, I wanted to give you the floor and opportunity to share your experience with us as well.
And I think you're on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. My transmission has been a little bit iffy on my end, so I will be happy to just share with you a little bit about my experience growing up in Vanport, how we got there, and sort of carry it through the flood. My family came to Vanport in 1944 to work in the Kaiser shipyards. My father came out in 1942, but the rest of the family followed in 1944. And Vanport was a city that was really put together to serve people from all over the country. And so they had to hastily build everything. The first housing was, you might say the keel was laid for the first housing units in Vanport in 1942. And it was 1941, and it was, people were moving in by about the 10th month, people were moving into Vanport. And when we arrived in 1944, it was pretty much at its peak, but it was a city that was really designed to meet all the needs of the people. There were schools, there were large shopping centers for groceries, not furniture or anything like that. The schools were outstanding. Vanport had a junior high school, and I think it's the only junior high school that has ever existed in the Portland School District. The interesting thing about Vanport, when Vanport first opened in 1942, the Housing Authority of Portland, who had the responsibility of managing Vanport, and also Vanport had a city manager who was a member of the Portland Housing Authority. And the Housing Authority directed that Vanport be segregated, and they started it. But people were moving into Vanport at such a swift pace that by the time my family got there, they couldn't keep up with that particular style. So it sort of went by the wayside. Also, a little side note is that the schools were fully integrated, and but the Housing Authority of Portland directed the school superintendent to segregate the housing, but he refused to do that. I mean, the schools, but he refused to do that. And so it was a city that was built very quickly, but it was not a slum, and it was not raggedy, broken down. It wasn't that. It wasn't the same thing that you would get if you were buying an apartment or living in the Pearl, but it met the needs of the people. And I think that after the war ended, it was very difficult for African Americans. The unemployment rate for African Americans was almost 50%, as opposed to about 20% for everyone else. And we stayed there until the flood, May 31st, 1948. And that was a very interesting experience because for everybody, but particularly for African Americans and members of the Japanese community, the Japanese had been in the internment camp, and when that ended, there was about 350 Japanese families that lost everything before we lost everything in the flood. Their housing and property was confiscated and just outright taken in some instances, but also there were neighbors that also protected their property and took care of it until they got back. And so, but Vanport was totally destroyed by the flood in 1948. And for my family, it was quite a journey. We lost everything that we had except for what we had on our backs. And my mom managed to get a very small suitcase and took a few pictures and some important papers, and also clean underclothes for all of us because we didn't know where or how long we'd be gone. But we bounced around for about 2 years from Vanport to a small Lutheran church over on Northeast Rodney and Russell. And from there, we moved out to Swan Island, where Kaiser had one of his shipyards. There were some barracks out there that had housed shipyard workers, and I think also some military people. But we lived in those barracks the summer of 1948. And then from there, we moved over in the Northwest Portland and stayed in trailers over in Giles Lake for a year. And then my family was able to find an apartment on North Interstate from 1949 into early 1950. And then after that, we moved to Swan Island. Those barracks that we had lived in down there during that summer of the flood, they had fixed them up and really made very nice apartments. And so we stayed there before finally my parents finding a house over on Northeast Cook Street, about a half a block. So our journey from the flood and our growth really started again when we moved over on Northeast Cook Street, and I was able to finish up my last 2 years of grade school at Irvington Grade School and go to Grant High School and ultimately to Portland State University. And I always like to share with people, I work part-time at Portland State University now, and but Portland State University
we may have lost Mr. Washington here.
Okay.
Well, I wish we could have heard him finish that thought, because it is amazing that the roots of Portland State University are in Vanport, and it might not have existed if Vanport didn't exist. Hopefully Ed will rejoin us, but I'll reiterate our appreciation for him sharing that story. It's probably the most powerful version of why we elevate the importance of all the perspectives that are brought, not just by the folks on this committee, the folks on the EAG, everybody that we engage through the public engagement process of this program, because even a story like this that some of us may know parts of, there's really nothing compared with that sort of first person testimony and Ed bringing that to us. And so when I say we need all of you to bring your stories and what's valuable about this corridor and the areas around it, Ed obviously just did a master class in that. And so yeah, let's bring that energy, please. So anyway, thank you, and then we'll get back to Lily.
Yeah, of course, yeah, I wish Ed could finish his thought there, but yeah, that qualitative experience, right, and that lived experience, you just can't do enough research on to find that type of storytelling. So, but it was really fascinating to hear him talk about the Japanese American community, and that kind of leads us to this next slide. You know, as you guys are aware, like the African American community was not the only one who experienced inequity, and almost adjacent to the Vanport neighborhood was the Portland Assembly Center, which is the current expo center just west of the I-5 bridge. And in 1942, the Japanese Americans all over the country were required to leave their homes and property and live in camps for most of the war. And the Portland area Japanese Americans were also evacuated from their homes and forced to live at the Portland Assembly Center, where very hastily constructed temporary living quarters were provided. And the Japanese American community lived on site from May 6th to September 10th of 1942, and the camp housed almost 4,000 people. Across the country, it is estimated that the Japanese American community lost some $400 million in property during their internment. Next slide, please. We also want to recognize that the Columbia Plateau was home to the indigenous tribes that shared similar languages, culture, religions, and diets. And this region was in fact the highest density of Pacific Northwest indigenous populations. The indigenous people used this area, and more specifically, the now occupied, which is now occupied by the Vancouver National Historic Reserve, to access the Columbia River for fishing, gathering food, transportation, and even as temporary residence and as a trading post. But in the early 19th century, white settlement disrupted the tribal communities, and as was done much across the US, the government removed most of the indigenous peoples to the reservation in the 1850s. But this area along the Columbia River remains significant to the indigenous communities today. Next slide, please. We also want to acknowledge that the original construction of I-5 displaced the heart of Portland's Black residents living in the Lower Albina neighborhood, which was a thriving community. Much of the Black community that was displaced from Vanport by the floods ended up settling in North Portland, and many of these were displaced again by the construction of the freeway. The I-5 construction demolished homes and businesses, forced residents to relocate across the Portland metro area and start over without any adequate compensation, breaking the opportunity to build that generational wealth for these communities. Next. So we're going to switch gears and talk about equity in urban design. And to achieve equity, we'll be using the metrics already established by the IBR program, which will be informing our design moves, especially once we begin to develop more focused design details. So given the history we just reviewed, we're not simply looking at equity. We'd also love to have the opportunity to work with you and the community, as Nolan mentioned, to identify how racial healing can be facilitated through design. And as part of that, we'll be asking ourselves, how do we repair past and current harms that transportation infrastructure has affected various communities? The design firm that Nolan and I are part of has worked on the restorative justice on Interstate 5 in Lower Albina. And we focus on working with the community, establishing transparent processes and building trust, and designing with the community, not just for the community. And we intend to bring that trust and process here as well. And as we work with you through the development of the IBR program, it's important for this process to be dynamic, and we hope that you give us the feedback on how to best have that conversation with you and hold us accountable to these objectives. Next, please. Thank you. So the IBR program has set up the following equity objectives. These are not urban design specific, but they do apply to the IBR program overall. And while some of these do apply to design more directly, others are applicable indirectly. And I just want to take a moment and summarize these equity objectives because we think they're actually rather important. So the first objective here is to improve mobility, accessibility, and connectivity for historically underserved communities who have typically experienced transportation barriers. The next objective is to integrate equity through the area's history and culture into the different physical design elements of the IBR program. The third objective is to create opportunities to work with local government and agencies and our partners in order to identify what are those community improvements. Another equity objective is to provide economic opportunities for minority and women-owned businesses, BIPOC workers, workers with disabilities, as well as young people. These objectives also prioritize access, influence, and decision-making power for underserved communities. And of course, all the work will be evaluated to actively reduce any potential harm. When we met with you last time, we introduced the different scales in which urban design can have direct impact on our experiential quality of place. And if you remember that extra large, medium, small scale maps that we presented, and we wanted to use these maps as a base to explore how equity can be addressed at all these different scales. So with that, if you go to the next slide, please. At the large scale, that is, capturing the different municipalities that IBR falls within, we're looking at the equity impact along the corridor as a whole. So for example, the American Public Transportation Association found that transit riders in US were 40% white and 60% people of color, which is directly reverse of the actual population of the country, where 60% are white and 40% are people of color. And this kind of like national statistic is also reflected in local ridership as well, with 5% of the commuters today in Portland metro area being white and 20% being people of color. So with this ridership statistic, what are the opportunities to connect people to jobs, but also to non-work destination via the transit network? How can we improve access to opportunities via transit? But I do want to be mindful of that as we pose these questions. We want to acknowledge that IBR program is not able to solve all of socioeconomic inequalities and issues, right? And so we still think it's important to ask these questions to our agency partners and begin to explore opportunities that could facilitate these community needs along the IBR corridor. Next, please. At this medium scale, as we dive deeper into a particular section along the IBR corridor, and we're just using this particular map as an example, but really, we could have zoomed in anywhere along the corridor. What we'll be, coupling some of that quantitative data research with qualitative data. And the qualitative data is really the feedback and the intimate knowledge of the place that is going to come from you and from the community. So the details that you all can provide will help create design solutions that are reflective of local needs and of course are also culturally relevant as well. Next slide, please. At the small scale, equity becomes very tangible. Equity can mean how safe is this place? Public facilities can often be not safe for women, as we mentioned, and not always accessible or conveniently accessible for people of different ages or different abilities. So in the next few slides, I'm going to talk to you about universal design, what that means and how that promotes equity. I'm also going to go over how well designed, really well designed places actually promote equity, especially when ownership of a place or a space can be shared by all. Before I move on, I'd love to pause here for a second and open up the floor for discussion. And Nolan, if you have any other thoughts here as well.
Sure. So obviously we've presented a lot of information. We're going to present a little bit more. We just wanted to pause because these are, in essence, categories of kinds of ways that equity manifests itself and expresses itself in urban design. Again, we've taken our pass based on our professional expertise, but as you look at that, if there's things that you see that are missing or that don't make sense and you could use a clarification, those are all things that we'd love to hear. And of course, if you want to spend some time with the material and send us an email next week, that's great as well. But we love a conversation and a dialogue.
Looks like you have a question.
I do. Have you identified specific sort of vulnerable communities within the project footprint that you need to account for or to work with? I'm thinking specifically of a couple of low-income trailer parks along Martin Luther King outside of Marine Drive interchange. And they would be potentially influenced by choices made with the exits off of Martin Luther King that I've been talking about before.
So that's a great question, and absolutely the identification of particularly vulnerable or populations that we want to keep track of from an equity perspective. The program has been doing that. I'm going to put Johnell on the spot because I believe his team has done some of that thinking. We're certainly at the input stage of that, so we haven't begun to digest it as well as we will. But I don't know, Johnell, if you have more to add about some of the thinking that's been done.
Yeah, maybe if you could say the question again. I was multitasking.
No. Yeah. So the question was, have we begun to identify populations that might be vulnerable? The example Tom gave was a trailer park or mobile home park that is in the project vicinity and might be impacted with regard to transit access, things like that.
The answer is yes. It's there are a couple of things that are guiding that analysis. One of which is the program's own definition of equity, which it goes beyond what you would traditionally see in a federally funded project, which is just focused on sort of disparate impact or disproportionate impact on populations relative to how a project has to mitigate those impacts. And so a long way to say yes, and it's an iterative process as well. And part of the premise again is how do we ensure that if communities are impacted, how do you mitigate that impact? But beyond that, and the whole purpose of a lot of our equity framework and our equity objectives is how do we leverage this investment to advance communities, equity priority communities. And I see our equity lead, Jake War, has just popped up.
I wasn't sure if Jake was on the call.
I'm going to have Jake respond even better. So
No, I think you got a lot of it. I just wanted to add a little finer point on it. So there's a couple things that we've looked at is where sort of each of our equity priority communities, where there are certain concentrations of each of those groups. At Hayden Island, like you mentioned, it's certainly older adults and people with disabilities really stand out as populations there. And that mobile home park is also we've identified as we're going through the environmental review process, and we're looking at where are potential property impacts, where are potential air quality impacts. And doing that through the lens of what communities that are more vulnerable, how they might be impacted, and therefore what that means for the decisions we make and the sort of mitigations that we implement as the program moves forward. So yes, you're spot on that's needed, and that's what we've been doing to make sure that we're looking at impacts, we're looking at how the benefits of the program are distributed. And that we're making sure that as we list those equity priority communities, those are the priority for our focus.
Thanks, Jake.
Thank you.
Other questions, comments, contributions to sharpen this equity lens on urban design? And we're going to have a little bit of time at the end for Q&A and discussion as well. So if there's ideas that come up that you don't have in your mind right now, we'll still have more time for that as well. Okay, Lily.
Yeah, thank you. This is a perfect segue into this slide, and we probably sound like we're beating a dead horse here, but as professionals we bring the design expertise and knowledge, but nothing that we do will be successful without your input. So this is why it's especially important for you all to lean in as representatives of your communities and share your needs, which is really going to shape the success of the work that we do collectively. So next slide. We also want to acknowledge that designing is an iterative process. Each step we learn and we recalibrate and evolve the design solutions. And especially when a sensitive topic like equity is being applied to it, right? And so this process of iteration will continue throughout implementation. Again, we as designers, implementers, and you as community leaders will have the collective, responsibility to course correct, especially with infrastructure improvement projects at this scale. We may not always get everything right because, quite frankly, undoing decades of inequitable planning is no small task, but we will continue to improve on our processes and design outcomes with each phase. Next, please. You all may be familiar with the term TOD, which stands for Transit-Oriented Development. And this often means that when you have a high capacity transit stop, we tend to see higher density of development along those stops. And, sometimes we get taller buildings and more of them. But in addition to simply promoting density, which is still what we want to see, how can we build upon the TOD notion to really promote healthy mixed use communities that support diverse socioeconomic demographics? Next slide. And if you recall a few slides back, I mentioned how good design by default is equitable because good design is usable and it's intuitive. It delivers quality experience for all, regardless of your age or abilities. It's also pleasant, and it tends to have, people tend to have positive associations with well-designed places. And they also tend to, by default, feel safe and secure and inviting. So with next slide, please. The good design is also promoting universal design principles by default, which means that it's easy to navigate in those spaces. And it's very convenient and efficient for everyone, regardless if you're pushing a stroller or using a wheelchair or walker, or if you're visually impaired and so on. Next slide, please. We also want to take a minute and acknowledge that in recent years, cities have been pushing for what is referred to defensive design, which is seen as inequitable because it often targets people that are already disenfranchised. So defensive design is often used by cities in public places in order to discourage activities like sleeping on benches or minimizing wear and tear and maintenance, or preventing crime or protecting the environment. But there are ways to achieve those goals through thoughtful design that still integrate empathy and equity. And the first example that we have here, which is from Hunters Point Park along the East River in New York City, shows how design can thoughtfully be, brought to, you can thoughtfully bring people to the waterfront by raising a sidewalk and a path, but we kept the natural areas protected from human interaction, versus an example from number 3, which is intended to provide public seating, but is also trying to prevent people from sleeping on these benches. Yet I would say, we would probably all agree that this is not a comfortable place of respite for anyone, even for just a moment. So next slide. Defensive design tends to require a new approach with equity in mind. And you can still have places that are safe and require less maintenance by simply practicing good design principles. This particular image is a shared path for bikers and pedestrians, but because it's slightly winding, it forces bikers and scooters to travel at a slower speed, making it safe for pedestrians. And these benches, while are too narrow to sleep on and have no backs, are wide enough to comfortably sit on and relax for a moment. Next slide. Lastly, we wanted to share a few images that hopefully get you thinking about how we can bring equity to different types of places and at different scales throughout the IBR program. And this could be from race connections that feel inviting and safe to race transit platforms that feel like special places, or even public open spaces along the corridor that feel inviting to all, or potentially an opportunity to celebrate local heritage and culture at different aspects and parts of the IBR program. So with that, I think we're going to pause and see if you guys have any additional thoughts for us.
Well, and if we could pause back on that slide just a brief moment. I'm going to tee up a question, and it may be more helpful looking at that slide than if we're not. So it's really helpful for us to hear what are the places that you feel succeed at the principles we've just presented, that you feel comfortable, but you also feel that a wide range of community members, in particular in your community, but even beyond that, are comfortable. And if we were all in a room together, we might be looking over a map of the region, and you put dots down. Here are the places where I really feel at home or included. We've done this on a number of other projects, and sometimes the answers are really quite surprising. And the things that make people feel welcome are not the same, right? And so part of why it's helpful for us to hear that is because those aspects may not occur to us until we hear them from you. So I say that because obviously these are spaces that we think succeed at one principle or another, but we're interested to hear from you what those places are. So without calling on people, we would love, because this is a little easier than, what principles did we miss? Just give us a couple examples of places either here or beyond this program area, maybe even beyond the Portland, Vancouver region, where you feel a place really successfully included and engaged a broad range of people. Now you can take the slide down. I'm just going to go first.
Tom's ready.
I'm ready. Well, I guess I'll go. A couple of examples. I don't know what you can do about it, but certainly the local neighborhood I live in, very mixed use, restaurants and businesses and homes all kind of intermingled. It's that mixed use quality that creates vibrancy. And, I don't know how you build that into a bridge, but you look for ways not to interrupt it and look for ways to stimulate it in the surrounding communities. I'd also, in terms of sort of deliberate design and not within this region, but there's a block in Silver Spring, Maryland that was deliberately designed as a pedestrian mall with shops and became kind of an urban town center, but it was very kind of deliberately built with fountains and play areas down the middle of the street for the kids to play in. And I think it's about 2 blocks long, and it's just thriving in the entire community. It's a very eclectic, mixed community, and everybody shows up there every night. There's music and food and dancing and community. And it's just a splendid place in an urban setting, and one of my favorite places to go. That's all I got.
That was great. Good lead off commenter. Who else wants to share with us? Oh, Darcy, your hand is up.
I agree with Tom. And when you originally asked the question, it made me think about the Vancouver Waterfront Gateway project that's not built yet. It's not the waterfront project in Vancouver. It's right next to it. And I've just seen the plans for it, and Tom just really kind of articulated sort of what I see in those plans. Just a lot of different like mixed use spaces. It's very ADA accessible, really cool, beautiful lighting that I think helps make you feel safe and welcome. But that's a project plan that I've seen that I think looks very interesting. And I would put my hand down, but there's some pop-up on my screen blocking my hand, so I'll work on that.
Thanks, Darcy. Other folks, these have been good.
This is Lynn. So I actually like the existing Vancouver waterfront from like where Beaches is to downtown, that whole walkway along the river. I just find it's pretty eclectic. You see runners, you see bike riders are more often on the street, but you see families, you see it's just used a lot anytime, day or night. And I think the visibility to the water is probably one of the distinguishing elements.
Thank you. That is, I was just going to ask, what is it that you think creates that sense of welcoming? And absolutely, waterfronts are those places where everyone, for one reason or another, from all kinds of different communities, they want to go down, be near the water, see the water.
Well, but I'm reading this book on kind of design, universal design, and the width matters, right? And the sight distance and the lighting and the fact that the shrubs are not encroaching. They're there, they're green, but they don't feel scary, and it's line of sight. So a lot of the things that you talk about, I could probably draw lines to that and how it plays out.
Excellent. Mr. Washington, we're thanking you after you dropped off the call, so I want to reiterate that. And I can't tell when you got back on the call, but the discussion we're having right now is about what kinds of places, either in the program area or the Portland, Vancouver region, or even beyond, do you feel are really good examples of equitable, accessible, inclusive places? So I will let you think about that, just in case you're hearing that question for the first time, and maybe turn back to other committee members to see if there's others who, oh, Martha, your hand is up.
Yeah, I sort of following on the side of Lynn's comment about the waterfront. I think that the walkway part along the actual waterfront and then as it goes along the river to the east is great. But the waterfront itself is so high end. The restaurants are so expensive and the apartments are so pricey that my husband and I don't go there anymore because it just feels it's safe and everything, but it just doesn't feel like a place we want to be. Mm-hmm. That's all. Mm-hmm.
I'm so appreciative of that comment. So we worked on the Broadway corridor plan in downtown Portland, and we had a big community workshop, and this topic came up. And we had included images of places that we thought, as urban designers, were equitable. And somebody walked up to the station I was manning and said, this isn't an equitable place. And they pointed to Director Park, a park that our firm had designed, and we're really, really proud of it. I said, okay, well, let's have a conversation about it. What is it about this park that it doesn't feel equitable to you? And they said the same thing you said. They said, look at all the restaurants around the edges of this park. They're all expensive. I don't feel welcome here if I feel like I had to pay, some exorbitant cost to eat at that restaurant and sit out at these tables and chairs, or the deli has sandwiches, but the sandwiches are expensive, the coffee is expensive. And so even though that may not have been about design, it was about how the programming and the composition of the elements in that space either invited people or it left people feeling like this space is for somebody else. Thank you so much. That's such a good point. There are a few people who haven't spoken yet. And so I want to make space for them to do so. And then, and I include you in that, Ed. Is there anyone who hasn't spoken that would like to speak? I think Tom has his hand up for a second comment.
And looks like Darcy does too.
Well, Darcy was saying that she was having trouble putting her hand down earlier. So I'm assuming that may be the same thing.
No, I think she got her.
Okay, you have another comment. Okay, well, let's let those who haven't spoken keep thinking, and let's go to Tom and then Darcy.
Thanks. I was just wanted to add to my comments when Lynn talked about waterfronts. I'm a big fan of the South Waterfront Park on the Willamette. And it's nothing but a bowl carved into the space there and left as a park. And people use it for concerts. People use it for events. It's in constant use. And along with the other members of the Bridgeton Neighborhood Association, we are proposing that you guys consider a North Waterfront Park of similar design, just built into the land there, that would allow the community to have concerts, have a gathering place. And one of the things that we would like to see is to include waterfront access for the public, because there's no place along the North Portland Channel there for public access to the water for launching kayaks or paddle boards or things like that. It's all privately owned, privately controlled, and it's impossible to get a human-propelled vehicle into the water anywhere along there. So it would be a great benefit to the community to be looking at that waterfront access question.
Awesome. So I'll just highlight this. I wasn't going to tell this part of the earlier story I mentioned, but the surprising outcome on one of these previous exercises was that a huge number of people put positive stickers on the Moda Center as an equitable, inclusive place in one of our old projects. And some of us were scratching our heads and we were saying, that doesn't feel like urban design is creating any sort of exceptionally equitable outcome there. But it was a great example of how the programming, what the purpose of the space is. It was a reason for people to go there, right? And I may go there for a basketball game. Somebody may go there for Disney on Ice or whatever. But the point was that it was designed to accommodate, different folks at different times. And so as a result, it was in everybody's mind as, yeah, that's a place I go. And when I'm there, I feel welcome. And I think Waterfront Park is similar in the way that it accommodates different communities, different events throughout the year. Okay, Darcy.
Go ahead and go to Michaela first.
Okay, Michaela, I don't see Michaela on my screen, but maybe.
Oh yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to go off of that Moda Center point, where I feel like one of the reasons why I find the Moda Center to kind of be centered around equity is that you don't necessarily have to take a car to get there. And I think that is super important. Like, not only is like the max an option, but like also busing is an option. And parking downtown can be really expensive. So like any opportunity to take something that isn't like a single occupancy vehicle, I'm definitely all for. And I really enjoy that aspect of it. And just the fact that the surrounding areas of the Moda Center create such like an atmosphere where like, yeah, you're going for a Blazer game, but you don't necessarily have to be there at the time the game starts. You can stop off at like a local brewery and get drinks or dinner before you have to walk into the Moda Center and pay, $26 for your beer. You can go ahead and have a good time somewhere out in the local community and support local businesses before having to then, venture inside. And that's something that I feel like is really important when you're looking at equity, is not only like the people that are going to these places, but like how they get there.
Awesome. Thank you for adding that. Was there anyone else who hasn't spoken before we jump back to Darcy? Okay, take it away, Darcy.
Go ahead, Darcy, and then no, go ahead, Darcy, and then we'll call. Go ahead, Darcy.
Just really quickly, I don't know if it matters much at this point, but Lynn brought up the trail on the older part of the waterfront by Beaches and McMinimans, and I totally agree. And I think part of what makes that trail feel really nice is how wide it is. It's a big, huge, wide, very comfortable trail. I think that's important. And I also just have to echo and agree with what Martha said about the new waterfront in Vancouver. And I live here, I live in Ridgefield. As beautiful as it is, it's also not for me. Like that's not my get down at all. It does feel very exclusive and unwelcoming. And I personally don't like using that space or visiting those businesses as much as I like other areas. So I just wanted to echo that. I think that's really important. It is very expensive.
Thank you. Okay, Trina.
So I'm kind of with, you know, the two ladies that were just speaking. As far as the waterfront, yeah, it's very, I agree. It's too ritzy. And as far as the Moda Center, what I remember, I think that's the same thing that used to be the Rose Garden Arena.
Yep.
What I remember most about that was when I was in high school and just after, I would stop there after work on my way home on the warm summer nights and walk through the water feature. I would take my kids when I was in my early 20s there just to play in the water feature. So it was accessible and it was free.
Thank you. Such a good point. And again, water, something about water that draws people, and fountains are a place where you can actually put water wherever you want it, unlike a river. Okay, I know that on our annotated agenda, we were hoping to wrap up this topic in about 3 minutes. So there are a couple people, and I don't want to pressure anybody, but there's a couple people that haven't spoken, want to make space for that. And just
Ed or Dina, Brooke, Tom, Julie, Irina, Sherry, Jana. Any other comments before we?
Tina has her hand up.
Yeah.
So I appreciate the comments about affordability and making things feel welcome to people in all spectrums of the community. I also see a value in trying to do things that are different and exciting and things that will bring sort of a rejuvenation to the area. So, you know, for me, I actually kind of gravitate towards things like the farmers market, where I can get local produce from our area and feel like I'm contributing to supporting local businesses. And at the same time, you know, taking advantage of some of the new infrastructure and things that are available to house a farmer's market like that. So I can see, you know, both ways. It is expensive when you invest in new infrastructure, but there's also the ability to try and integrate some of the local businesses and small community farmers and others into that new infrastructure as well.
Awesome. Thank you. So I think that's the most of our time today. Really want to appreciate everybody for engaging and sharing with us and getting such a broad perspective of what inclusive spaces feel like to you. This won't be the end of this conversation. Obviously, as Lily said, it is iterative, and it will start to become much more real as we start to apply these to specific places and focus areas. And then you'll give us more feedback about what it means in those places, and then whether we're succeeding at responding to those principles through our concepts. Lily, anything else before we?
No, I'll just echo again what you said earlier. If you guys think of any additional kind of thoughts and ideas that you may have, please do shoot us an email, and you know, we'd love to integrate that as we come and meet with you again.
Great. Well, thank you both, Nolan and Lily, for that really terrific presentation, and a great example of how the program is really thinking about how do you really integrate equity. So great discussion, and we look forward to another conversation next month. So with that, I'm going to now invite our community engagement team, Salome and Brian, to give us, or Jay, my apologies, to give us an update on what we are up to relative to community engagement.
Good evening, everyone. Again, my name is Salome, she, her pronouns. It's nice to see you all again. I'm going to walk you through our community engagement update, but I will have some help today, thankfully. So you don't have to hear just me today. So next slide, please. And so I just want to give a moment for our entire community engagement team to come on camera if they can, just so you can see our full team. I don't want to give the impression that I am doing this all alone. And so I will kick it off to Jay to introduce himself.
Thank you, Salome. Hi, everyone. My name is Jay Houseguard, he, him pronouns. Happy to be here and excited to connect with you all and provide some updates, and also really great to hear such a robust discussion around urban design. So, but again, my name is Jay Houseguard on the community engagement team, and I'm not sure if there's others of us here tonight to introduce themselves. Paris, are you here?
Yes, Paris is here.
Yes, I am. Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming. Thank you for being a part of CAG. My name is Paris Moore. I go by she, her pronouns, and I'm just happy to hear a conversation. I'm going to pass it to Shannon.
Hello, all. Nice to see you again. Shannon Singleton. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm the community engagement lead for the IBR program. And I will hand it back over to Salome.
Thanks, team. I just thought it would be important for you all to know the community engagement team and who we are, and not just behind the scenes, but half of our team works behind the scenes for you all. And so they are in the background doing great work. Shannon is our community engagement lead. I provide services such as liaison work for our equity team and with our community-based organizations. Paris and Jay both help us with community engagement coordination, whether it be logistics or project planning and execution of those plans. And Brian is my counterpart who also helps with larger outreach and briefings predominantly. And so next slide, please. So I'm just going to walk you through some of the high level parts of our community engagement plan for the rest of 2023. Some of the things that we have ongoing are our community briefings and our briefings to community-based organizations and neighborhood associations. These briefings are done upon request, but also we do proactively reach out to these groups to ask them if they'd like updates and to engage with them and their membership. Also coming up pretty soon here over the summer is we're going to get going on our miniature grant partnerships with our community-based organizations. This will focus on representing equal sides of the river, having our community-based organizations do direct outreach, as well as focus on community-based organizations that serve our program's equity priority communities. Within that work, with the miniature grants, but also within our own work, we have what we call affinity listening sessions. These are listening sessions that are directed towards specific communities, so folks can feel comfortable and safe expressing their needs or feedback. We also will be having an equity roundtable coming on June 8th. This one will focus on the intersection of multimodal transportation and equity. And then also one of the things that will be coming up is we will be hosting staff office hours. These are hours in which different members of different teams will be available at our IBR office location to answer questions from the public, give information, and also collect feedback from members of the public. And those office hours will be posted publicly for folks to just come in and drop in, as well as the ability for folks to request appointment times via our website. And so here we have just some of our upcoming neighborhood forums. We have a couple in person. They are going to be happening in Vancouver and in Portland, one in downtown Vancouver on May 31st from 5 to 8 p.m. And another one at the Oregon Association of Minority Entrepreneurs office on the Portland side of the river on June 6th from 5 to 8 p.m. And here we'll provide the opportunity to have folks ask questions and learn more about what is being studied, our federal environmental review process, program timeline and milestones, our financial plan, upcoming design work, and future opportunities for community engagement. And so now I'm going to pass it over to my counterpart, Jay, who will walk you through some of the events.
Thank you, Salome. So some of the upcoming events we have scheduled, we've listed out here, and I just want to say thank you so much to everyone in CAG and also in the Equity Advisory Group. We were able to capture all of the input that you provided from your March meeting and had some really great ideas there that really helped us move forward with what our decisions would be in terms of fairs and festivals that we could attend and table at this summer. 100% of the events that we've chosen came from your input. So thank you all so much, truly, for your help. This here is really just a progress report. It's an ongoing effort. And so this isn't yet a comprehensive list. We're hoping to be at approximately 10 events total during the summer and fall season, but the 6 that you have listed here are the ones that are confirmed. So we're going to be at the Latino Community Resource Group's Resource Fair. This is with Fourth Plane Forward in Vancouver, June 3rd, Vancouver Pride, July 8th, the Vancouver Farmers Market at Esther Short Park in October. And then we have 3 events in Portland, Juneteenth, the weekend of June 17th and 18th, Sunday Parkways in the Kenton neighborhood, June 25th, and then the Kenton Farmers Market, that's Wednesday evenings, still solidifying the date. Again, this is still an ongoing effort as we solidify our plans, but that's going to be in August. So with that, we wanted to kind of open it up and hear from you all. If there's interest in joining us at these events, kind of gauging that interest in helping us move forward. I could, raise of hands works or an audible.
And one correction, the Parkways is actually going to be in the Cully neighborhood. I had to say that because I live in Cully, so I'm like, now it's going to be in my neighborhood.
Thank you, Salome.
All the fun events.
Yes, my apologies. Yes, it's in the Cully neighborhood. Yeah, they have them, I think, in 3 different neighborhoods throughout the summer, but Cully is the one that we'll be at. So thank you for the correction.
Looks like Jana has her hand up.
Yes, thank you. I do have a question here. Greg came and presented to my board of directors and asked for opportunities to get in front of some of my members. And I have my truck driving championship, which will be in the north part of Portland on June 10th. So the question is, who do I follow up with to see if someone from the IBR team would like to have a table there or a booth there or something like that?
I think you may have mentioned that before even. So
thank you.
Shannon, Jay.
I can say something on that. So thank you for that, Jana. So that is in our list that's captured. There were so many great ideas, I think over 50 total. And of course, with our resources, we know we won't necessarily reach all of those, but we definitely have an interest in reaching more. And so if I can plan on following up with you directly after this to try and make plans for fitting that in. So I appreciate you following up on that one.
Thank you. I'll try to figure out how to take my hand down and turn my thing off too. So
sounds good. Is there other interest from folks in attending? So of those 6 that we've mentioned thus far, we're considering a sign-up form so that we can kind of allot a certain number of spaces for folks to join us at each of the tabling events. But just engaging interest. Are other folks here interested? you don't necessarily have to decide now too, because we can share out, we have all of your contact information. We can share out a sign up form as those dates approach too. But
Yeah, and I can speak for myself. I'm really bad about committing the dates without my calendar in front of me. So please, if you do see a date that works for you, just let us know. You can respond to the CAG admin email, which is ran by Paris, who that'll get to us as well. Or you can send an email directly to Shannon or myself or Jay, whichever is easiest for you. And again, as we move forward through the summer and we get more dates solidified, we will keep you up to date on events that we will be at to give you the opportunity to join us and have some time with us, as well as informing members of the public.
And this is an area that we have heard over the last couple of years that I think the CAG has been interested in, and interested in knowing when the program is maybe near your neighborhood or going to be nearby. And so I think with Shannon really kind of leading and the introduction of members of our community engagement team, we're hoping that you'll have more information and you'll be able to engage a little bit easier. So that's part of what we're trying to achieve today. Just more transparency with the plans and more engagement opportunities for you as well. So there's a lot of feedback that you've provided to the program. So our hope is that you'll also see, as there's decisions made about which of those opportunities the program's going to say yes to. I know both Johnell and I were like, so is the Clark County Fair on the list? So I know that's part of the many ideas that have come up. I know Sam's already, in a different meeting, but we were waiting for Sam to ask about the fair. So we'll get more information out to folks. Lynn?
I also thought it would help maybe if we clarified that if our team raises their hand, they would still be with a program staff member, or because I think that's important.
Oh, yes.
Okay. So just saying it to my colleagues, I know that makes me feel a lot more comfortable. So hopefully the rest of y'all would feel the same way. So thank you for that.
absolutely, yes. And the answer is yes. We'll be there at all of them, at least 2 members from our community engagement team, but then we're still making the planning around slots for other members to join us. But I imagine, could be 2 others at each event. So stay tuned for more on that. I saw a hand raised, I think, Ed.
We can't hear you, Ed.
Yeah, I just want to apologize for something happened to my transmission. It just disappeared. And so I apologize. I was wrapping up, and I will be happy to finish it up at some time in the future where I have a little bit more reliability. I'm have a lot of low ability on the transmission here in my neighborhood for some reason. So I apologize for that, but I appreciate all that I was able to hear and all the hard work that everybody is putting in and the participation. And I thought there were some wonderful ideas of things that can be done as we proceed. So.
And we're just sorry. We'll pick a time when you have better transmission. But frankly, what you were saying, we were all kind of just sitting on the edge of our chairs listening to you. So you were definitely the key presentation. So we'll look forward to hearing the rest of that, because I think it translated goals and aspirations into reality in a way that many of us wouldn't have understood otherwise. So thank you for generously sharing that. I'm sure it was in some ways difficult.
Thank you. I would just say this, that in some positive ways, the experience that I got and what I learned from that has really helped me even up to this day. and it's an event that I will never forget. But I learned a lot about resiliency, and not only just for myself and my family, but for thousands of other people who got through all of that. So thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Ed. Salome, Jay, is there anything else that you wanted to share on the community engagement or other questions or comments for the CAG?
Nope, just again, this list is just growing, and these are just the ones that we have confirmed thus far. So be prepared to hear more about events as we finalize and make final touches and get our tabling forms in and payments processed to be at more events.
Ed, it looks like your hand's up. Did you have something else for Salome and Jay?
No, I'm just messing up clicks.
Oh, okay. Well, I want to give you the space if you do. Okay. All right. Well, what's next? So let's roll right on into that. Thank you for having the slides up. We have an equity advisory group meeting, May 15th, an executive steering group meeting, May 25th, community advisory group meeting, June 8th. So we're back again in about a month, and then another equity advisory group meeting on June 19th. This is our time for an opportunity for public comment. So as of right now, it sounds like we don't have anyone signed up, but we do want to provide, again, an opportunity for folks to provide comments. So I will go through the instructions just in case there's anyone that may be watching on YouTube or listening in case they would like to provide comment to our community advisory group. You may do so by phone by dialing 1-669-900-6833 or 1-408-638-0968. You enter meeting ID 993-5459-6043, passcode 674942. To raise your hand, *9. And after you are invited to speak, dial *6 to unmute yourself. We have a 10-minute time frame that will be divided among the number of requested speakers. Next slide. To submit comments after the meeting, please send those comments via info@interstatebridge.org with CAG Public Comment in the subject line. You may also call 360-859-0494 for Washington or 503-897-9218 for Oregon. Please leave in your message CAG Public Comment, and all written comments must be received prior to 48 hours in advance of each upcoming meeting. We haven't had any public comments, so just want to make sure that folks on the community advisory group know that any public comments that are received, we do send on to you, and that has not occurred for the last several months. So that is why you have not seen any show up in your inboxes before our public meetings. So with that, Brent is telling me still no one has signed up. So I am going to ask if Frank, if you stepping in for our administrator, do you have any other wrap-up thoughts? I'm seeing you kind of nod your head, but is there anything that's come up that maybe you want to share?
No, I just was going to say thank you to everyone. You know, I think one of the things when we're trying to put these meetings together is not just having presentation kind of at the group, but getting good engagement. And I think really appreciative of the engagement today from everyone. So want to thank everyone for their time to attend the meeting, and you know, I think the good discussion and feedback on you know, multiple of the topics. So you know, really happy that we had good dialogue and good discussion. So thanks everyone.
Thanks, Frank. Johnell, anything else you want to say before I turn it over to our co-chairs?
No, I just want to thank everyone for leaning in with us, particularly relative to the equity discussion. this is new for a mega project to be thinking about these concepts. And so thanks to all of you for helping to guide this work and sticking with us as we work to operationalize it.
Okay. All right, Co-Chair Valenter, I'll turn it to you so then you can pass it to Ed to close us.
Thank you. Just briefly, thank you for hanging in there. It's a sunny night and my remarks will be intentionally brief so you can get out there and enjoy it. But it's been a long, almost 2.5 years, and just thank you for staying with the project. I think we're beginning to get to some of the more concrete decisions that we can have influence. So appreciate kind of seeing us through the process and learning so that we can provide informed insight as the project continues. With that, Ed?
I'm always speechless after I hear comments from Lynn. So I'm just going to go out speechlessly and enjoy the sun. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Big thanks to Shannon and Salome and Jay as well.
See you all soon. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Have a good night. Thank you, everyone.